Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over the top 10 controller Fortnite players in the world right now. Since I'm a controller player myself and a lot of my videos are catered towards controller players, I have a feeling that this is a video a decent amount of you guys will enjoy. And what I think really makes this video interesting is that the top controller Fortnite players change way more frequently than the top mouse and keyboard players. Honestly, I don't really know the reason why, but I could probably name you about 8 to 10 different mouse and keyboard players that have been in the same top 10 to 25 range for at least the past year or so. But when it comes to top controller players, on the other hand, it seems like there's just a lot more shuffling among the top names. So this video is going to be my opinion of the top 10 controller players based on recent competitive success. Don't hate me if you disagree with anybody making it or not making it, because it really isn't that serious. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so coming in at the number 10 spot, and this is one of those lesser known players in my opinion, we have Miro. And I think one of the reasons why he's a little bit lesser known is because he's one of those guys that really didn't get that much public attention until maybe 4 to 5 months ago. And I specifically remember that early on a lot of people made fun of him for being quote unquote linear made. Well, it turns out that was wrong, because he's been one of the hottest controller players in the world this season, and if I were just basing this list off the last few weeks, I think he'd be a lot higher than 10. So for Trios FNCS, he's placed 5th in week 1, 6th in week 2, and 2nd in week 3. Plus, he's also fared incredibly well in Trios Cash Cups with multiple top 5 placements there as well, and maybe his most impressive placement was finishing 6th in the October DreamHack Finals. So like I said, a little bit of a lesser known player, but he's definitely someone that absolutely deserves to be in the top 10 due to his recent performance. At the number 9 spot, we have one of my all-time favorite controller players, Unknown Army. A few months back, I really believed that Unknown was pretty consensusly a top 3 controller player in the world, but then he made the somewhat odd decision around Season 3 to try out mouse and keyboard full-time. He was definitely still really good, don't get me wrong, but he never really reached the level of dominance that he had achieved as a controller player, so eventually he decided to go back. And even though I do think his stretch of playing mouse and keyboard did set him back a little bit, he's very quickly getting back to the old Unknown. His trio finished 4th in week 2 of the current FNCS and 6th in week 1. Plus, he's been a pretty consistent top 20 finisher in almost all of the recent Cash Cups as well. His performances in the August, September, and October DreamHacks were a little disappointing, so I think that prevents him from being any higher than 9, but I have no doubt that he'll eventually be able to get back to the level of dominance that he was at back towards the beginning of Chapter 2. At number 8, we have ReiT. So ReiT's one of those players that's just been incredibly consistent ever since the beginning of Chapter 2, honestly. Him and Rogue Shark are one of the most recognizable duos in all of competitive, and they've continued their success into trios. Week 1, they finished in 7th place, and week 2, they finished in 3rd. I think the only reason why ReiT doesn't get more hype as a top controller player is because peak performance and winning tournaments always gets more hype than prolonged consistency for some reason. So even though I feel like he could easily be higher than 8, that's still a very solid spot at the end of the day. Player number 7 on our list is going to be Coop. So Coop is one of the most interesting players on this list because about 2 months ago, he honestly had one of the most wild weeks in competitive Fortnite history. On August 16th, he finished 1st and won 50 grand in the Chapter 2 Season 3 FNCS Grand Finals. Then only 5 days later, on August 21st, he followed that up by again finishing 1st in the August Solo DreamHack Finals and winning 10 grand there. There are definitely plenty of top competitive controller players that haven't won a single major event in their entire career, and this dude literally won 2 in the span of 5 days. However, the reason why Coop isn't higher after establishing that insane level of domination is because thus far, his performance in the Trio FNCS hasn't really been great. He has no top 10 weekly finishes yet, so I think you can make a strong argument that Coop is the best solo competitive controller player right now, but it's still yet to be seen if he can reach that same level in team game modes. At the number 6 spot on our list, we have AV. Now, he's actually on the same trio as ReiT, so he has the same trio FNCS placements of 7th and 2nd so far, but what I think puts him slightly above ReiT is that he's had a bit more success in solos, and especially in solo cash cups throughout the last few months. Back in like May or June when they were doing solo and duo daily cash cups every day, I remember that AV was getting high placements pretty much 24/7, and it was really cool to see duos, especially because he played with Chap. So pretty similar to ReiT as a whole, really consistent, and has definitely been a top controller player since Chapter 2 began. Moving on to the top 5, and at the number 5 spot we have ReiT. I actually made a full video breaking down ReiT's gameplay about a week ago, so you can check that out if you're interested in getting a full look at him. But to sum it up simply, he's just an insane player that's maybe the most mechanically talented controller player in the game right now. He's been absolutely dominating cash cups, FNCS, and dream hacks over the past few months. Now, some people sort of discredit him because he plays on West, and that just isn't as well regarded in comp as NA East and EU is, but ReiT sort of downplayed that by finishing 25th in the NA East October dream hack while playing on a ridiculously high ping. And to build on that a bit, I want to quickly move on to number 4, because here we have ReiT's teammate, WavyJacob. Jacob's one of those rare players I talked about earlier that's been one of the top controller players for a very long time now. His level of dominance on NA West is just unmatched by anybody else in another region, really. He's finished top 5 all 3 weeks of FNCS trios, so he's been dominant there. He has a top 5 placement in DreamHack, and he's also finished first in 3 separate cash cups in just the last 2 months. So much like ReiT, I guess you could make the, oh, he's only good because he's on West argument, but his gameplay definitely passes the eye test, and I'm sure that him and ReiT would be insane on any region. At the number 3 spot, we have our first and only EU player on this list, Leche. In my opinion, Leche is definitely the closest thing controller players have to like Saf, Zaid, or Booga. This is a guy that's been a top controller player from the very beginning, and he's just as successful now as he was back then. I think it's a real telling sign that Benji and Mongrel choose to trio with him for FNCS when they could have picked anybody, and even though their placements thus far haven't been insane, everybody knows that's one of the absolute top trios in the entire game. Leche's also had a lot of success in cash cups and other major events over the last year plus, and I don't think anybody will complain about him being top 3. The second best controller player on our list is Furious. Furious is another one of those players that at first when he started placing really well, a lot of people actually called him linear made, but even though linear was nerfed a while back, he still continued to be one of the most consistent controller players in competitive. He finished first in the Season 2 solo FNCS Grand Finals, he finished first in the solo DreamHack October, he's had plenty of success in cash cups, and even though his performance in trios FNCS hasn't been insane, he does have 2 top 20 placements already. And finally, the person taking the gold medal and number 1 spot for best controller player in the game right now is Illest. So this is one of the textbook examples of a player that really wasn't known all that well until about 6 to 7 months ago, but since then his level of domination has been insane. In the past 5 months, he's won 5 separate cash cups in both solos and trios. His trio FNCS placements the first 3 weeks have been 4th, 5th, and 5th, and he even finished 8th in the solo FNCS Grand Finals last season. I think that he's been hands down the most dominant controller player in the last 6 months or so, and even though his track record may not go as far back as some of the other players on this list, I think that recent performance is what matters the most, therefore making his number 1 ranking very fair. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down the comment section below. What do you think about my rankings, and are there any players that I didn't put top 10 that you think should be? Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.